Good afternoon, colleagues. Good evening and good morning. It seems like time calls us to action. And with this, let me greet you all on behalf of the Switch Asia Policy Support Component team to this very important webinar, which is dedicated to understanding the nexus between sustainable consumption and production, circular economy, and climate change. And what we are looking at is really at the experience of our technical experts and their countries on how this nexus is being in practice executed. Now, what we will do is we will quickly go for the housekeeping rules. May I please ask our colleagues to share them? As we do not have a power to mute your microphone, we very much count on your on you observing the house rules and mute your microphone and keep them muted until your time to speak comes. We will be recording this webinar, so it will be available to all of you who are registered and who are present, but also those which are registered. The record of the webinar is also going to be available on the Switch Asia website, and my colleagues are going to be sharing various links while we are going on. Now, in the process of this webinar, please feel free to put the questions to our speakers and panelists in the chat. And while they are not always will have an opportunity to answer to you right in a verbal form, they will try to type their answers. And also, if some urgent questions emerge and we run out of time, please don't hesitate to send them to us again on the email, which is going to be shared by my colleagues online. Now, this is my pleasure to open this webinar. Next slide, please, which is going to be lasting for 1.5 hours. We will start, or we started with welcome remark from my side. My name is Zinaida Fadeeva. I'm team leader of the Switch Asia Policy Support Component. We will go through a quick introduction of the context within which this webinar is being delivered. And then after that, the colleagues are going to present reflections on the current state of the NDCs in the South Asian countries, and we will jump into the panel discussions, two successive panel discussions. Now, next slide, please. Let me just start, next slide, please, with a quick summary, succinct one, about Switch Asia program. Again, more information could be found on our website, and I cordially invite you to look in depth, as the website is rich with various policy advisories, results of work of the grant projects, various events, past and upcoming, and various other materials, which I'm sure you would find useful. The objective of the Switch Asia program is to support transition of the region of the Asia and Pacific to the low carbon, resource efficient and circular economy, while promoting more sustainable supply chain and products between the region, within the region, and between the region and Europe. We are currently covering 42 countries across Asia, Pacific, and the Middle East. The program is operational rather long. It's probably one of the longest technical advisory programs in the area of sustainable consumption and production. It's operational since 2007. And it works through supporting the various economic sectors, but also through focusing on important and potentially very leveraging policy instruments. So the key polluting industry and export-led value chains would be traditionally in focus of the program. For example, food systems, textile, leather, plastic, sustainable tourism, construction, among others. The program consists of two major elements. One of them is a policy support component, and it really supports the development of policies and industrial practices that lead to reduction of the environmental and carbon footprints, and also supports for compliance with international agreements. This is demand-driven component of Switch Asia. So we are responding on the request of the government as well as regional organizations to assist them with development of the policies, frameworks in the area. Now, the second component is grant projects. Currently, there are 33 ongoing grant projects operating in the region. And recently, due to the launched new call for proposals, we are hoping to enjoy the company of much more grant projects by the end of this year. Now, the difference between the policy component and the grants is, of course, policy is focusing on the policy, but grant projects are really focusing on the piloting and modeling SCP practices in SMEs and consumer organizations in the grounds. And between going on, the activities on the ground through grants feed into the policy development of the policy support component, and vice versa, the policy support component intends to elevate and upscale the grant project activities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. The emissions stemming from material production and consumption processes of goods and services pose significant and rather grave threat, as we know, to our planet and its climate stability. So data indicate, and we can see figure here, that 2.3-fold increase in emissions from material production between 1995 and 2015 has been observed, with even greater increase will be reported in the upcoming report of the International Resource Panel. So the contribution of the emissions which come from the production and use of materials is rather significant. And you can see here that major materials production, including steel, cement, plastic, contribute rather substantially to these emissions. Alarmingly, our traditional model of growth tightly link well-being and economic activity with resource production and consumption. Next slide, please. This problem is recognized and addressed through evolving concepts historically. These concepts, approaches, and strategies are familiar to all of us. They have been changing one another and very often, and even now they really exist in parallel, though the time of their emergence slightly different. So we are talking about sustainable consumption and production, green economy, and more recently, the circular economy concepts and strategies. The overarching goal of these approaches is clear: to decouple economic activity, well-being, and environmental impact from resource use. And it accordingly either called resource decoupling, well-being decoupling, or impact decoupling. Next, please. So what we will do is immediately start with the diving into the substance of this webinar. But what is merited to say that this webinar is one of the series of the webinars which really is done by the experts behind what is called technical advisories of the Switch Asia policy support component. You recall that I emphasized two elements. One is grant and another is policy support. So what we are trying to do through this series of technical advisory focus on climate and material is to unpack the linkage between climate and material. through material mitigation, adaptation, and resilience perspective. So we are quite certain that NDCs could be strengthened, and it is indeed a strategic opportunity by linking it much stronger with policies in the countries which are focusing on sustainable consumption and production and circular economy, and vice versa. The issues of consumption, production, material use, circularity could be strengthened by linking them stronger to the NDCs and different other climate-related policies. So currently, the technical advisory is going on in South Asian countries, and with more coming in the Pacific and Central Asia. So series of webinars are done in relation with these technical advisories. One of them already has been conducted, and the second one we are participating now. And those webinar series are to discuss current understanding of the linkage between climate change and sustainable consumption and production, or put it in other words, between climate and material, to identify opportunity to integrate sustainable consumption and production, circular economy into climate actions, and to identify the challenges and solutions in deploying SCP strategies to enhance climate ambitions. And this is exactly where we are to face the call or the process in the area of the UNFCCC. Now, with this, next slide, please. It is my pleasure to invite the expert of Switch Asia Policy Support Component, Mr. Sanjay Vashist, to reflect on links between the SCP, circular economy, and NDCs in the context of South Asian countries. And this is exactly the technical advisory which is currently ongoing. Sanjay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zinaida. I hope you can hear me.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving this opportunity. In the ongoing technical assistance, there is a team of 6 colleagues supported by the guided by the Switch Asia team based in Bangkok. The countries that we are referring to in South Asia comprises of Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. I can see my colleagues, national experts have already joined. They are also in the call. Arif from Pakistan, Rakshita from Sri Lanka, Shubhuti from Nepal. And Doha Bhai couldn't participate, but Tenzin is also there. And what we have done so far is when we started working on this as a team, we started looking at the nationally determined contributions of the country. And we also started reviewing and analyzing the sustainable consumption and production strategies, as well as implementation plans of the country, to find out whether there are overlaps between these two strategies, whether there are potential to integrate sustainable consumption production, and whether sustainable consumption and production can also bring in a lot more co-benefits. So that was the expectations. That's what we started looking for when we started working on it. We also realized that in 2015, when the INDCs were submitted, countries had very little time to work on it, and that's where most of the INDCs focused on greenhouse gas emission reductions and building resilience. Very straightforward. And then after that, when the revision was done, that's when COVID impact was going on, and then also we had a very little time. The good part will be is that I will certainly conclude later on after presenting my slides, but what we found overall is sustainable consumption and production has huge climate co-benefit mitigation, as well as we just need to dive deeper on that. Having said that, next slides, please. Let me start with straight away with countries. Bangladesh, every NDC and SCP of the countries, they are inclined, or they aspire towards a vision, towards a goal. What we found is in Bangladesh, the aspiration has been that secure Bangladesh prosperity by 2041 through a transformation of a green economy. Another aspiration is also the fact that Bangladesh is graduating from least developing country to a lower middle income country. So that graduation, so any work on sustainable consumption and production and national determined contribution, basically climate change, needs to contribute towards that aspiration. Potential of providing co-benefits towards low carbon development path and optimum utilization of resources is also Bangladesh aspirations, and increasing share of renewables to 40% from its current 3.6% by 2041. And these are the three aspirations towards which national determined contribution and SCP strategies contribute. Next, please. If we look at the SCP potential in countries NDCs indeed are more energy focused, and as I said earlier also, which is natural because mostly climate negotiations has been our GIG reductions, and how SCP can harness GIG reduction, that needs to be brought forward. So NDCs are more energy focused in Bangladesh. SCP and for sustainable consumption, production, circular economy, there are plans to reduce traffic congestion, promoting non-motorized vehicles, and shifting from road to rail, shifting towards public transport also. Bangladesh NDCs also considers several carbon-intensive sectors, which are currently including power, industry and transport, industrial process and product use, that is IPPU, and if FLOW, this is agriculture, forestry, other land use. Sorry, I didn't wrote it completely because I had less space here. But then Bangladesh NDCs also recognizes and identifies sectors which has a direct bearing on sustainable consumption and production. Sectors like traditional brick manufacturing, ready-made garments, reducing food waste through strengthening supply chain of agricultural products, etc. So there is certainly a lot more inclined towards the sustainable consumption and production. Next, please. If you look at the Bhutan, we all know Bhutan's commitment towards that. They plan to remain carbon neutral for commitment period 2021-2030. So the NDC is more directing towards this objective, and of course that needs to be driven by multitude domestic policies and strategies. And Bhutan's aspiration also is to take forward the gross happiness index. I think that will come in the next slide also. Next, please. So if we look at the Bhutan sustainable consumption production potential in countries NDCs, there are four sectors that has emerged that we could identify. One is, of course, focusing on lifestyle, and idea is to pursue gross national happiness for the present and future generations is secured under changing climate change also. So that also brings in the adaptation and building resilience also. Industries mitigate through technical measures. The most important part in industry here is not to move towards heavy industries, but to move towards value addition and manufacturing products with cost cutting. And that will also have a lot more impact on the production cycle, the circular economy, how that will work, how the recycle will be integral part of it. So that is our interpretation, trying to read between the lines, because it has not been elaborated much. Transport, transition to zero emission mobility with targets 2020, 35, 45, 50. And idea is again to move towards public transport rather than remain on the expand private transport. And Bhutan also proposes that they want to go for a mass transit of bus systems and the BRT. Human settlement, zero waste Bhutan is the aim, and which again has a potential of taking forward sustainable consumption and production potential, and also bringing the climate co-benefits here. Next, please. Nepal, one of the most vulnerable country in South Asia, and also least developing country. Aspirations are that greenhouse gas emissions are reduced so that global warming can be limited. How? It also emphasized on resource constraint and reduced environmental degradation, and enable efficient resource management. And idea is that resources which are depleting and they need to meet. So it's both way. One, to protect the way of life, but then also ensure demand side management. Reducing emissions and preserving ecosystems that store carbon and creating green jobs. Climate resilience by enhancing adaptive capacity and reducing vulnerability to climate impacts. So these are the aspirations with which sustainable consumption and production strategy and national demand contribution has been reviewed. Next, please. And the sectors are, again, you will see a lot many overlaps in the South Asian countries: energy sector, transport sector, industry sector, tourism sector. Energy sector has very clear numbers: 15,000 megawatt by 2030, of which 5 to 10% will be from mini and micro hydro power, solar, wind. 25% of all private vehicles are e-vehicle sales. There is a boom already there. 20% of all four-wheeler public transports are also by 25 will be e-vehicles. Adopt low emission technologies in brick and cement industry, which is very much evident that it is linked with the sustainable consumption and production practices to reduce coal consumption and air pollution, and formulate and implement nature-based tourism plans in at least 5 main tourist destinations. So Nepal NDCs also has many aspects which can take forward sustainable consumption production and also ensure climate co-benefits. Next, please. Sri Lanka, aspirations on sustainable consumption production climate agenda are: one, Sri Lanka wants to enhance the competitiveness of Sri Lanka products. It also wants to implement, have a common implementing mechanism for NDCs and NAMAs, and also sustainable consumption production, because implementing two strategies separately is too much in hand and maybe repetition of a lot more work. Third, outreach to international export markets. And fourth, enhance countries' eligibility for climate finance and also investment, because sustainable consumption production can bring in many investments in the sectors also. So these are the aspirations with which Sri Lanka's NDCs and SCPs are. Next, please. And if we look at the sectors, it's water and sanitation, waste, industry. Circular economy in water and sanitation, which focuses on recycling, segregation, preventing, avoiding, or reusing MSW, composting, biogas, market-based. And while in waste, it's established sustainable consumption production practices in industries, tourism, and households, both commercial as well as residential. Industry, resource-efficient cleaner production made compulsory by 2025 for sensitive or polluting industrial sectors, and transform industrial state into eco-industrial parks by 2030. So these are the three sectors on which Sri Lanka has been focusing in. NAMAs is national, if someone can, nationally appropriate mitigation actions, yes. So, and national adaptation plans is NAPS. Next, please. Sri Lanka, the climate potential in countries SCP is: energy, save to 2,600 gigawatt by phasing out incandescent bulb, around 5,000 gigawatt by efficient light. So energy, transport, industry, and you would see these are the sectors that were emerging in Nepal, in Bhutan, and Bangladesh also. And industry, fuel switching to biomass energy, enhanced application of resource efficient cleaner production, eco-industrial parks, and waste improves circular economy, reduce MSW generation by 10%. So, and the sectors that are emerged, if you'll see below, is tourism, tea, textile, energy, transport, waste, and agriculture. But when we speak about energy, is the one which cuts across all these sectors, because managing the demand would also have a lot more co-benefits on energy efficiency, and also material use could also mean bringing more energy efficiency in the sectors. Next, please. Pakistan aspirations on SCP and climate agenda are: climate vulnerability and impact. We all know Pakistan has faced floods last year, and major portion of Pakistan were flooded. Many cities were flooded. So certainly climate vulnerability and impacts remain on the top that need to be tackled. global commitments, sustainable development goals. And that's because this is fulfilling the responsibility of a country globally on the international platform. Also seek international support and engagement. Pakistan receives international support for SCP and climate action. So certainly, and this is what the eligibility we also saw in the aspiration of Sri Lanka. Environmental degradation and resource scarcity is an issue. This is to looking at the sustainability of the future generations and economic benefits and competitiveness. So these are the aspirations with which Pakistan NDCs are there. Next, please. And sectors are energy, agriculture, waste, and DRR, forestry, health, which are more on the adaptation point of view. So these are the sectors which focuses, for example, energy, targeting 60% of renewable energy and banning coal imports by 2030 to mitigate emissions. But agriculture addressing sustainable practices and biodiversity. So this is also more focus on reducing emissions. It also means use of energy into agriculture sector. Targeting a 50% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030 through improved waste management. So Pakistan, mostly NDCs are actually focused on reducing greenhouse gas emission reductions. Next, please. If I can share some of the gaps that has been identified. These are the gaps. Our team has been carrying out many consultations with stakeholders, and one-to-one discussions also, a roundtable also, these are the inputs that we have received, and we thought we should share with all of you, since there is a policy makers panel here, and we just want to bring. We will be happy to share these with you also in person through mails, but we thought we should share this with you, and then we can build on that. One gap is links to converge sustainable consumption, production, and circular economy and climate ambition are not yet recognized yet. I mean, they are more towards GHG. Let's do energy, and anything on adaptation, agriculture. But how SCP CE can achieve climate ambition, those links are not yet recognized. SDGs and NDCs are two parallel tracks of global policy with very limited linkages. So that's one gap that we need to overcome when we start working towards a revised NDC. Very limited awareness among stakeholders like businesses and consumers, and thus demand within a country is missing. And I mean, I'll give you an example. Many of the big multinational companies, they are very conscious about their social branding, and because they contribute in social causes also. So can we link this with that? So that awareness is not there, that branding is still not there. Incentives to best practices and penalty to defaulter is blurred on sustainable consumption, production, and circular economy and climate action. I'm not saying it's not there, it is there, but it's blurred, it's not very clear. SCP and CE is the second to climate action in terms of accountability to international communities, while it should be both. Countries should be reporting, and I think once NDCs are revised and if SCP potential are highlighted, then it will become part of the MRV system also, measurable, reportable, verifiable framework, and that's when countries will be reporting that how we are also conserving resources while reducing greenhouse gas emissions also. SCP is not seen as adaptation strategy. This is very important from the perspective of South Asian countries, because for us, rebuilding resilience is the priority, while also ensuring that we do not follow the wasteful lifestyle and we continue to reduce our dependence on energy sources which are free of GHG. So keeping that in mind, adaptations, if once we start highlighting SCP as adaptation strategy, it can play an important role. It becomes more important also. Finances, does SCPC increase eligibility to investments? Not yet. That's the finding of the desk research we have carried out so far. Regulations and enforcement mechanisms for effective SCP implementation, there, not there. But if SCP and climate change can go hand in hand, that will be important for us also. Next, please. And this is my last slide, just to sum up, but I'm trying to sum it up, keeping in mind that it is more future-oriented. One, private sector need to be engaged and they have also expressed interest to participate in SCP practices that achieve GHG reduction responsibilities. As of now, private sector is very much engaged more on the carbon credit mechanism. But I think one of the major conclusions our team had was that SCP can be much bigger once the private sector start working on it from the climate lens. Need to make business case to unlock investments into sustainable consumption production technologies and practices from private sector. And then sector with high potentials are buildings and constructions, like Pakistan on frequent construction are going on. In fact, one of the issue that also shared with us was that when the flood comes in and infrastructure is damaged, we have to reconstruct it. So certainly building and construction need to have sustainable consumption production practices in place. Waste management for energy, industry material efficiency is equal to energy demand management. And it's also there in the mitigation program in UNFCCC, textiles and cements. NDC revision process needs to be sensitized with potential of SCP-CE on climate action. Zinaida, that's from my side.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. And colleagues, what is important to emphasize that experts who are online with us now and who were working on uncovering this interlink between the climate and material use are actually very much insiders to the climate process. So they have been negotiators, representatives of the other groups which were promoting climate within their countries, and through the whole process of UNFCCC. So they are speaking about unearthing these relations not from the purely theoretical perspective. They know theory, but they also certainly very much practice oriented. But also from our side as experts for SCP, we certainly do also see potential of this closer linkage between climate and SCP. So we are pushing from two sides, insiders for two sides, meeting in between. So it's extremely interesting piece of work. And once we have publish the country profiles and work moving forward, it's going to be certainly, we hope, quite a big breakthrough along those points, Sanjay, which you highlighted, which we feel would be the major leveraging point of ambitions of the NDCs in this context. Now, again, while there is insufficient recognition of interdependence of the SCP and NDCs among many actors still, next slide, please. Certainly, the panelists of our next discussion, who represent governments in their countries, are quite convinced that this link exists and tangible in the context of their countries. Let me just greet with us Ms. Kumundini, who is the Director of Environmental Planning and Economics of the Ministry of Environment in the government of Sri Lanka, Dr. Dakal, who is the Joint Secretary of Ministry of Forest and the Environment in the government of Nepal, Dr. Ali Kemal, Economic and Policy Advisor at the for NDC Support Unit of the Ministry of Planning, Development and Reform, Government of Pakistan. Colleagues, you are welcome, and we are grateful for all of your insights. I would ask maybe the colleague, my colleague, to move the slides out so that we could see our panelist faces and listen to them appreciatively. So, Kumudini, Dr. Kemal, Dr. Dakal, can you please make yourself visible and unmute yourself when your turn to speak, please. Now, let me start, Kumudini, with you. You have been actively involved in UNFCCC proceedings as well as in the prior development of Sri Lanka's NDC. from your vantage point, do you believe that there is a potential for sustainable consumption and production and circular economy to enhance countries' climate ambition? And if so, how can we harness and realize such potential effectively?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sinida. Actually, we all know that climate change is one of the environmental problems created due to unsustainable production and consumption patterns of the people, especially started in with the Industrial Revolution process. So actually, we have the basic thing there, because this problem is created due to this behavior patterns of the people. That's the stronger position that SCP and NDC can be linked, because when we consider about the climate actions, there are two kind of nationally determined contributions: mitigation and adaptation, climate change mitigation and adaptation. But when it comes to climate change mitigation, because we especially focus on the how to mitigate greenhouse gases. So that's the limitation when we inculcate the SCP policies and priorities into the NDCs. Anyhow, there is, I think, huge potential to align SCP policies and priorities with NDCs, because we all know that NDC is internationally applied commitment for the party countries. So I think most of countries, they are actually, then they make every efforts to fulfill the NDC commitment. So I think NDC can be used as a tool to or vehicle to implement SCP as well, because most of the SCP concept can be included into the NDCs, especially when we look at the mitigation sectors. I think almost all the countries in different names, but have the same mitigation sectors, like power and energy, then transport, waste sector, industry sector. So in addition, some countries may have forestry and agriculture as well. In case of Sri Lanka, we have all these 6 sectors. I think in most of these mitigation sectors, actually SCP priorities in Sri Lanka incorporated. That is, especially when we see about the energy sector, I can say that in Sri Lanka, we have a target to increase renewable energy contribution up to 70% by 2030 for the energy mix of Sri Lanka. So I think that is a great thing, and it is a great example that SCP priorities included in the NDCs as well. And demand side management also one of the NDCs in Sri Lanka. So it also one of the SCP priority in Sri Lanka. Not only Sri Lanka, but it is SCP priority. So it also included in Sri Lanka's NDCs, and as well as that convert the fuel switching plants into natural gas power plants. It also one of the thing. And so like that, there are so many SCP priorities included in the NDCs in Sri Lanka. In industry sector, most of these things, circular economy and cleaner production, are major two things included into the Sri Lanka's NDC. So I think, but the thing is that actually when we developing NDCs, it's these things identified, keep in mind that reducing the GHG emissions actually I think in any country, their major target is reducing the GHG emissions, but automatically that SCP priorities then came into the NDCs without having intention to get the SCP thing into the NDCs. But I think that, as I said earlier, there is strong link between these two, because this problem also created due to the bad consumption and production practices of the people, I think. So NDCs can be used as a tool or vehicle to implement SCP priorities as well. That's my conclusion.
Thank you very much, Kumundini. I have two very short follow-up questions. One of them from the potential, I think might be your country person, which is asking why agriculture and forestry sectors are not included in the NDCs. In particular, food system, food waste might be critical issues in Sri Lanka. Could you quickly reflect on this one? And from my side, another quick question. So is it easy for you as a policymaker and as an expert to differentiate between, when you think about SCP, to differentiate between adaptation and mitigation measures, provided that sometimes, even though we build resilient and resource efficient, let's say houses, it might be matter as of adaptation, but at the same time it's automatically mitigation, because it is done with certain technologies which are less wasteful and longer lasting. So it is one of the interesting conundrum, of course, the whole climate change community potentially, I assume, wrestling with.
Yeah, thank you. For the first question, I think in Sri Lanka, as I said, there are 6 mitigation sectors, that electricity sector, then industry, transport, waste, forestry, and then livestock and agriculture. Together we have taken as the agriculture. So these are the 6 sectors. However, agriculture and livestock sectors also included into the adaptation sectors as well. Thing is that food, when it comes to the food sector in SCP, in NDCs there are a few sectors related to food, that is agriculture and livestock, then fisheries. So both of these sectors are included, covering the food aspect of the SCP one. However, as per my feeling, less attention paid on the incorporating all the SCP priorities into these agriculture and fisheries sectors when it comes to food aspect. And for your question, I think, can you repeat your question, Dr. Sunil?
So is it easy for you to differentiate between, when you speak about SCP, is it easy for you to always allocate it either to the mitigation measure or to adaptation, and sort of, or sometimes it is really serving both? Is it one of the miracle solutions, so to speak?
Yeah, because actually, if I take SCP policy and priorities of Sri Lanka, there are some sectors we can directly incorporate it into the mitigation. But when we consider about the 9 adaptation sectors in Sri Lanka, like urban housing and those sectors, I think most of these SCP priorities can be included into adaptation sectors as well. So my feeling is no clear cut, but because in SCP we don't have very sharp clear cut that these are going to mitigation and adaptation, but most of these priorities can be included into both mitigation and adaptation sectors. But mitigation, in mitigation NDCs, it is very clear that we can take very clearly SCP priorities into the mitigation thing. But in adaptation, I think we have to explore more, and we have to look at these things too when we prepare adaptation NDCs, because some of these priorities are already there, but no clear cut we can see. That's the thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumudini. Thank you very much. And as we listen to the report about from Sanjay, we really quite impressed about some of the activities of Sri Lanka, particularly those where you include work with industry and also international trade. So it's quite impressive and good lessons to explore by other countries. Thank you. Now, can we move to Pakistan and greet Dr. Ali Kemal? Dr. Ali Kemal, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, Dr. Ali Kemal, you have been at the forefront of advancing the SDGs in Pakistan through SIN and SIC. So there were quite a lot of challenges the country faced and still remain strong. And while on the surface, it might seem that our discussion revolves around the integration of SDG 12 and SDG 13. However, we are all aware that numerous other interconnections among the SDG goals exist as well. So as a person at the helm of SDGs in the country, what are the primary challenges in reinforcing both the evident and less apparent interconnections between climate goals and other SDG goals?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And as far as the challenges are concerned, so if you start anything new, it is full of challenges. And as far as the SDGs are concerned, it is so interlinked that we have to think of the positive energies out of it, the positivities out of it, because there are certain trade-offs, and sometimes the trade-offs are negative, sometimes there's a positive externalities. It's not trade-offs, we call it multiplier effect or external positive externalities. So number one is that we have seen some of the components which says that this is the sustainability measure. And when we are talking about the sustainability measure, social, economic, and environment sustainability, all the three comes together. And when all the three comes together, then we will see one definition for all, which has a positive impact on all the other three, all the three components. So whenever we devise a policy, though I would not say that it is implemented in a letter and spirit, but when we are talking, when we are thinking, and when we are making the policies, we always think about these things, that all those policies which have a positive impact across the board, we will have it. Otherwise, there will be a problem. But having said that, we are into economic growth in 2013-14, and we have coal power plants because we do not have the energy. And still, if we are talking about South Asia, we have 40 to 50% energy produced by the coal plants. So still, we are moving towards from coal to renewable energy. That's a challenge. We are still moving from the sustainable consumption and production, moving towards sustainable consumption and production in different ways. It's some adaptation and mitigation as well. So as far as adaptation is concerned, we are not very bad. We have a national adaptation policy which was approved this year, but that's a policy, but we have already moved towards the adaptation. As far as the mitigation is concerned, that's a longer term process, because that involves just not the government of Pakistan, it involves all the private sector, households, civil society. So we need everyone. So that's the main challenge. When we are talking about household sector, the awareness and the sensitization is very important, and that's not a very easy task in 241 million population country. So we are progressing on that, but but the progress is very slow. And I'm saying this progress is very slow based on no facts, because we do not have the data right now that how much food loss index has decreased or food loss is decreased. Because as the income grows, we are moving towards the buffet system, in which there's massive food loss and there's wastage as well. Having said all this, the positivities are out of all the three. We are doing somewhat, but again, the major challenges in implementation, adaptation, mitigation is one is one problem. The data challenge is another problem, because the collection of data on these indicators, especially goal 12 and goal 11, because we are not talking about goal 11 here, but we had a stakeholder meeting 2 days ago on the goal 11 and goal 13, and we have discussed goal 12 over there as well. So goal, as far as goal 12 is concerned, or sustainable consumption and production is concerned, so data collecting and collation of data, because several ministries have several data and all the private sector has the data. But we were unable to collate all those information into one portal and say, this is out of 400,000 industries, and we are collating the information from all the 400,000 industries, and this is what we are getting from those industries. Especially, we do not have the sustainability reporting, and all the 20-25 firms are giving sustainability reports in 1 year. So that's again one data problem or a reporting problem. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kemal. I am seeing now if there is any questions which could be you could enlighten us. Let's see. Now, Mr. Kazi is asking: is the government strategizing towards improving implementation framework and also having consistency of approach? So you are the best person, in fact, to answer this, because you really sit in the seat of SDG, which connects the whole development agenda. Having that, well, he says that data challenge is there, but synchronization in the strategy is needed. So in a sense, he is trying to put together two essential ingredients for impactful strategy: data and coherent strategy, integrated one. Is there any move at the in terms of governance of the country towards such more coherent strategy?
So, right. I got that. So basically, there are 2 or 3 components which I want to share. Should have shared before that. But we have an IPAS system, Intelligent Programming Automation System, which is a project-based system in Planning Commission. So what we are doing is that we are expressing it more, exploring it more, both the ways, expressing and exploring. And we are having a training of all those guys who are making PC1s, that if you're making the hospitals, whether the hazardous waste is treated or not, that's a goal 12, again, indicator or target. So otherwise we will build the hospital and we have no data whether we have hazardous waste treated or not. So we are asking them to explicitly explain whether you have hazardous treatment or not, and how much bucks or rupees are spending on it, maybe 10%, 5%, 2%, or whatever it is. Then we have a performance-based system portal, which is going to be launched soon, in which we are asking all the ministries, all the departments, to put it on the SDGs that this is your target, this is your goal, and whether you are investing in that indicator target or not. So that's another way of doing it. So, and we are doing a 13th five-year plan rather, in which we are incorporating or mainstreaming SDGs indicators and targets wherever it is relevant. We have 28 chapters in it. So in that way, we have a 5-year guideline that we have to invest in this area to get the result on this indicator. So it is a binding document if it is approved. If it is a binding document, and every ministry and every line department in the provinces has to make projects on that.
What I found also interesting is that in the example of a hospital, you linked these indicators also to financing issue. And of course, finance and other forms of accounting probably quite pertinent for planning for ambitious or less ambitious interaction. So it's very interesting. Now, a quick question from Ronald Charles to you. And if you could just give a equally quick answer, please. You seem to imply that adaptation is doing better than mitigation in the long term. Can you expand on why?
Why is an easier answer. Adaptation started very earlier. So because adaptation started in communities, adaptation started in the agriculture sector. But as far as the mitigation is concerned, we have to invest in that. Adaptation is changing the habits. And whenever you are not doing good in managing the water or managing the agriculture sector, so farmers and other guys who are managing it, they adapt very easily. So if they want to harvest the or sow the plant or the agriculture products 1 month after, 1 month before, or 15 days after, 15 days before, they adapt very well. But as far as the mitigation is concerned, you have to go for the efficiency, and it requires investment. So for that, there's awareness required as well as financing required to mitigate that.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Kemal. And with this, we move to Dr. Dakal, Joint Secretary of Ministry of Forest and Environment of the Government of Nepal. Dr. Dakal, you're with us. Thank you very much. Dr. Dakal, you've been very deeply involved in climate change and sustainable development policy making for quite a while in your country. Your understanding of the development challenges faced by countries, particularly least development countries, is really very remarkable. We all know that. So you are really expert and actor in this. And in this critical shift towards green and low carbon economies, how do you see the SCP and circular economy policies effectively operating in the developing nations like Nepal?
Yeah, thank you, Zinaida. Are you hearing me? Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to share my sincere thanks to the organizing committee for taking me as a part of this webinar. Regarding to your concern and the questions for me, do you know, as already Sanjay said that there is a very poor linkage between SDG and NDC. And I was thinking that SDG 12th goal is sustainable production and consumption, and SDG 13 goal is climate action. 12 and 13, they are very close. But NDC is a part of climate action. How do you link to the sustainable consumption and production is a very big challenge. For me, the developing country like Nepal, Nepal particularly is a mountainous country, landlocked country, and the economy is very poor. For me, uh, behavior change and capacity building of the local communities is really important. Despite the fact, if you go through the circular economy and its principles, I think we have to care to the local people, local communities in terms of resource efficiency, using the resources. I think we need a very good capacity building, training, knowledge, awareness of the people is very important, because it's a circular economy always demands very decent citizens while using the resources. And second, the developing countries can benefit from the circular economy through the job creation. As you know, most of the developing countries, either they have unemployment problem or underemployment problem. And circular economy is a part of sharing the resources, repairing the resources, or reusing the resources. They can create some new jobs. That's the second. And third, of course, the environmental protection is that the environmental protection normally, if you see Nepal, Bhutan country, even Bangladesh, we are doing our best to conserve our natural resources. But at the same time, pollution part, air pollution part is very serious, and it has direct related to the people's health. That's why the circular economy and the health part, we can link each other in the developing countries. And then fourth, of course, the climate change. As Sanjay very clearly mentioned about, not only about Nepal, including all South Asian countries. Nepal NDC focus forestry, of course, 45% is our target. And then agriculture is another, food security. And similarly, our another area is energy. Particularly, Nepal has a mountainous country, and we do have a very good water resources from the mountainous areas, and hydroelectricity and other renewable energies. We do have a very good opportunity to shift from fossil fuels to clean energy. Similarly, transport and industry and the waste management and other areas which NDCs will clearly mention. Regarding to the climate change and its carbon emission footprint, I think we can find nature-based solutions. Even developing countries, we do have one comparative advantage, that the advanced technology and advanced knowledge which is already developed by the developed countries, then the developing countries can take that comparative advantage from those countries. And we need some capacity building, and we have to increase some capacity to access the resource and technology. While talking all these factors and areas, my experience is the empowerment of the local communities is really important. And even we can take a community forestry, one of the best example here in Nepal, to protect the resources. And nowadays, people are not getting much benefits from the forest, because they are very champion in protecting the forest and conserving the forest, but the local communities, they are not taking the benefits from the forest. That's why we have a very huge opportunity to capitalize, to harness, to harvest the forest resources and create the new green jobs. uh, at the same time, another area is market linkage. Do you know, in the chain of circular economy, if you engage the local communities and they produce the products, and then we have to capacitate them to link to the market, is another important, because the pricing and branding, packaging and advertising and selling the product and getting the benefits, this is the another area of circular economy where we can build the capacity of the developing countries. While talking these 4 5 sectors, my focus is normally, if we would like to promote circular economy and the sense of the value of sustainable production and consumption, definitely we have to go to the rural area, to the field, to the local area where the poor people living. And most of the poor people in the developing countries, they are either eating imported food and wearing imported clothes. Then we can build the capacity in terms of resource productions, in terms of food and other cloth or other means. Capacity building is always vital, which already our previous speaker is also speaking, because the capacity building is an ongoing process. Normally, as you know, nowadays technology and the research and science is advancing every year. Then we do need capacity building activities as a part of life. Policy integration is another vital part, because most of the policy maker in the developing countries, policy are very good enough, but implementation part is always very poor. That's why, how do you integrate the policy like climate change or policy like circular economy? It should be integrated in terms of various stakeholders, various components, and then we can facilitate to the local communities. The policy integration immediately it flows to program planning, and then designing action and implementing the action in the rural areas. And then finally, the awareness and educations of the people is really important, because the sustainable production and consumption is a part of behavior change. Because if you do not change the behavior of the people who are living in the ground or rural areas, then you cannot success in the circular economy. I think overall in these areas, what I'm feeling that circular economy and sustainable production and consumption, huge opportunity we do have in the developing countries. That's why we need to capacity build in terms of resource, in terms of technologies, use and other means, but at the same times, awareness and education and the behavior change is really vital. And last and the final, my suggestion is circular economy, as I already said, that it demands a decent citizen of the society. Then we do have developed some area is a demonstrative area. I mean the good practices area. Then we can replicate, or you can upscale or outscale in the future once it is tested in the ground. Thank you very much at this moment. If I do have any questions and queries from the colleagues, then I will be more than happy to address them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dekal. You are very strategic in connecting different levels, so it's very much appreciated. Particularly thankful for you to emphasizing 2 points. One, on the community empowerment from the production and benefiting from some productive activities, and emphasizing that they already have access to some resources. They just need to be empowered to make sustainable use of it. And second point, which you very ably emphasize, is need really for market transformation, which is quite important. Now we have a few points here. Let me just put one of them to you. What is the role policy frameworks can make in behavioral change of communities and consumers?
Yeah, I read in the news. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Behavior change in the developing countries is very tough. But as I already talked, that if you go to the field and increase the access of the local communities over the resources, I think we can change the behavior. But despite the fact, you have to understand the value of the society, which society you are born and you groom, and what type of cultural values, society values you have to understand first, and then definitely we can change the behavior. Sometimes changing behavior, it takes a long time, but please do not tire and do our best effort together with the local communities and local people. That's my one point. And another one is we can integrate some behavioral part in the curriculum and education part, because we have to produce a decent citizen as well, not a decent product as a part of circular economy, but decent citizen we have to produce through the school and college education as well. And then second question is capacity building is always useful. However, the recent trends have shown that capacity development not strategized towards being translated into tangible intervention end up in never-ending circle of capacity development alone. Just experience here. Yeah, just share the experience. Definitely, I do agree that because of the every day or every year, new technology is coming in the market, and that's why the capacity build up is such becoming a very big challenge, because technology is very expensive, and the access over the technology and the ability or capacity to handle or to use that technology is really a challenge. But capacity building is not only is a tangible material use, but capacity build in circular economy is the very decent and very common and very comprehensive understanding of the society. Because what do I can do in the society, or what do I cannot do in the society? The demarcation of the decent society is really important while changing behavior and build the capacity. Thank you very much at this moment.
Thank you very much. And I think Mr. Kazi actually, well, he's right. And partially I felt that your mentioning of integration of these issues in the school curriculum or TVET curriculum might be really serving this foundation without ending up in the endless cycle of easy activities to report to the donor and resulting in nothing, but certainly constant upgrade of knowledge about new models, business models and new technologies would be another good answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Dakal. Thank you to all three representatives of the government for this very insightful exchange. And now we are moving to the second panel, where two colleagues will give us a perspective from the development assistance and development field. And it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Achala, who is the Asia Regional Director and Head of the Programs at the GGGI, Global Green Growth Institute. Dr. Achala, you are welcome. And Mr. Putera Zenata, or Zen, who is a Regional Program Officer at the NDC Partnership Support Unit. Welcome, colleagues, and we can pull the slide down and welcome our speakers. Starting, Achala, with you, and the first quick question: how we can look at the next NDC enhancement process differently in comparison to the previous stage?
Thank you so much, Zenaida. Can you hear me? Great, thank you so much. NDCs, I saw somebody asking what the NDCs are. The nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement is one of the key milestones in terms of ratcheting up the ambition under the Paris Agreement. And I was part of the negotiations process of the Paris Agreement, so I was some of the colleagues who were speaking before me, including Sanjay and a few other government representatives here. And the reason why we put NDCs in the Paris Agreement was to make sure that we don't compromise the legal rigor of the Paris Agreement, we don't compromise the effectiveness of the Paris Agreement, as well as we do push for the universal participation from all countries. So NDCs, as I mentioned, is one of the key milestones in this ratcheting up mechanism, where countries come together every 5 years to enhance their existing NDCs or submit new NDCs with a high ambition. So that's the process that we are going into in terms of the 2025 deadline, where countries will be really thinking about what else can they do in this national planning process. And GGGI in the previous rounds, we worked with around 30 countries to support preparing their NDCs, to enhance their NDCs, as well as develop NDC implementation plans. In some countries, we supported our governments to develop their NDC investment plans, as well as implementation roadmaps. So when I talk about NDCs and what can we do next, I'm actually speaking from my own experience as well as GGGI's overall experience. So what we have now understood from the previous process, NDC process, is that countries have really gone into building their technical capacity to plan holistically, as well as to foster participation of a broad range of stakeholders. I was the one who led the Papua New Guinea's NDC enhancement process as the country director of GGGI there. And we really went into provincial level, community level, to really get inputs from various stakeholders to enhance their NDC. And thanks to NDC Partnership for supporting that process, in addition to almost all our other NDC processes that we got support from the NDC Partnership. And countries also learn to promote sharing best practices. There have been several interlinked activities to NDCs. These include, for example, mainstreaming NDCs into national budgets, creating NDC-aligned fiscal frameworks, and also developing NDC investment plans, as I mentioned, to really serve as the foundation for mobilizing innovative and scalable financing solutions. So I wouldn't say that we have to really reinvent the wheel when we go to the next round of NDCs in 2025. There is a massive amount of work that has already been put in place and a lot of lessons learned. So it's about building on in terms of what we have already done in the previous processes. In terms of what can we do differently, there are two things I wanted to mention here. One is really to shift the focus from that incremental improvements to really focus on transformational change at the whole society-wide that the countries have to go into if they're really to think about green growth economic models in their countries, and embrace the broader principles such as just transition, nature-based solutions, and most importantly for this discussion, principles around circularity. And I think therefore this is an opportunity for our countries to really prioritize measures that promote social justice, economic diversification, and also most importantly, job creation. So in this regard, I think embracing principles of circular economy, promoting sustainable consumption and production patterns in NDC implementation could be a priority. I heard from Sanjay as well as 3 colleagues representing governments that actually we have done quite a lot in embracing principles of circularity in the NDCs. There are quite a lot that we could take from the previous NDC process, but I also heard from Sanjay that the link is really not very clear. So perhaps bringing the circularity principle in a clearer manner to really prioritize measures to reduce waste, promote resource efficiency, as well as to shift towards more sustainable and equitable economic model is important. And the second point in terms of what can be done differently from my side, where I sit, is really to have a concrete bankable project pipeline at the same time as the NDC submission. Our countries went into developing the NDCs, this whole exercise of consultation as well as a lot of assessments. Then they went into developing the bankable project pipeline. And in my experience, developing a project and getting funding for a project takes 18 to 24 months. If you are really, really efficient, maybe we can do it in 12 months, but 18 to 24 months in most of the cases. So let's not go into doing the NDC first on SCP, on circularity, and then think about what the project pipeline should look like. And I think these two should go together hand in hand. And the third point is I think we need to foster a greater global solidarity and cooperation. So I'm super pleased to see Switch Asia is really leading the discussion in this space. So thank you. And also great to see NDC partnership is really in this meeting as well. So we really bring the organizations like GDGI and others who are working on the ground to have better global solidarity and cooperation for our countries. I'll stop here. Thank you, Zinaida.
Thank you very much, Achala. Excellent points about more coherent approach, both from the perspective of linking it to various other aspirational ideas and strategies, such as just transition. But yes, the issue of bankable project, or pipeline of bankable project, is certainly on our mind, and it's a little bit of a chicken egg, as we know, process. So the private sector asks for the money up front, while the banking sector is saying, well, show us your capacity to deliver, and at the massive scale. So that is a big conundrum we all are facing now. Then it seems like Achala now has been indicating rather clearly that upcoming NDC enhancement process an opportunity for countries to become more strategic, more ambitious in sustainable development. why it is so, from your perspective, why the upcoming NDC enhancement an opportunity for countries to become more ambitious and more strategic in the area of sustainable development?
Thank you very much, Dr. Zinaida. Yeah, exactly. As explained by Dr. Achala earlier, parties to the Paris Agreement are obligated to submit to the UNFCCC enhanced nationally determined contributions by 2025, and the new NDCs are expected to embody, greater ambitions for carbon emission reduction in order to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Well, when you look at sustainable consumption and production and circular economy, they are indeed key drivers in reducing carbon emissions. The dominant model of the economy now still relies on the take, make, use, and dispose linear economy, and encourages overconsumption and leads to rapid product turnover. We all agree that this is bad, and it leads to more intensive carbon emissions. So it is therefore imperative for sustainable consumption and production and circular economy model to replace the linear economy model if we want to address the root cause of carbon emissions and then achieve the Paris Agreement goals. Now, as Sanjay mentioned earlier, there's also a strong adaptation case for incorporating SCP and circularity into the NDCs, particularly for developing countries, a lot of whom are very concerned about the impacts of climate change. So promoting SCP and circularity principles has the potential to improve resource resilience, enhance adaptive capacity, reduce vulnerability to resource scarcity, and climate impacts. So also, as mentioned earlier, some countries already explicitly mention SCP and circular economy in the 2020 NDCs. For example, Cambodia's NDC makes a clear reference to the circular economy strategy and action plan for NDC implementation. And then some elements of it are integrated into the NDC partnership plan. And now GGI is supporting the Department of Green Economy and the National Council for Sustainable Development in improving the production of refuse-derived fuel from new municipal solid waste in the Dangkor landfill. So another example, the Philippines specifies its needs for technology transfer and capacity building to promote circular economy and sustainable consumption and production practices. So I reiterate that the 2025 NDC enhancement process presents an opportunity for more countries to more explicitly include circularity considerations in their and commitments in their updated NDC. And then, as Sanjay said earlier, to link them clearly with their climate targets and in time develop specific strategies, regulations that promote circularity. And then that will lead to achieving the climate goals. Now, again, 2035 NDC enhancement process is an ideal avenue for countries to introduce, circularity considerations to their mitigation strategies. As you know, NDCs span a number of sectors, usually, energy, agriculture, forestry, land use, industry. Some countries specify subsectors like transport, buildings, waste, water, adaptation also. And you can see these sectors usually follow the government structure, whereby each ministry sets the target and implementation strategies for its own sector. So this enhancement process presents an opportunity and really a responsibility for each responsible agency, not just the coordinating agency, to really incorporate circularity considerations into the target setting and implementation strategy. The low-hanging fruits, so to speak, that we see in our countries could be sectors such as buildings, waste, water. We see some member countries already moving towards this, as reflected by the requests that they sent to the NDC partnership. For example, in Nepal, UNDP supported the government in developing recommendations for the use of cleaner technologies in the cement and brick industries to lower emissions. In Nauru, for example, the Pacific NDC Hub supported the government in developing feasibility studies on the establishment of a national recycling system. And I'll end my answer with this note. Developing countries cannot do all these things alone. They need technical and financial support in incorporating, SCP and circular economy considerations into their 2025 enhanced NDC and implementation strategy. from from the earlier steps of stakeholder engagement, planning, all the way to ideation, project ideation, and implementation. And to help facilitate this support, the NDC partnership has launched a dedicated support package for NDC enhancement that we call the thematic call. We already have a few countries requesting for support for the 2025 NDC enhancement process. So I would certainly encourage more member countries from the region to work with the support unit to submit more circularity-related requests, but also just as importantly, I encourage developed country members and development partners to carry out their responsibilities as enshrined in the Paris Agreement, which is to match the ambition of the developing countries with support and respond to their requests. Back to you, Zenida.
Thank you, Zen. Thank you. Achala, back to you with a quick question. So we spoke about funding of the projects, and I would imagine the fair share of those projects would be for the private sector. But if we slightly expand that bracket, and I would ask you, what would be the role, in your view, of the private sector, large or small, companies in driving circular economy and SCP when it comes to climate ambitions?
Thank you so much, Zenaida. So we just launched two regional projects in Asia. One is on municipal solid waste management in all ASEAN countries, and the other one on green building in 5 Asian countries, including India and other countries in Southeast Asia. And all these projects that we are working on have a very strong private sector engagement, or we hope to bring in private sector to mobilize investments for projects, backable projects that we are developing. And why I say this is because from GGGI side, we do understand the important role that private sector plays in implementing projects related to SCP and through the work on SCP leading to enhanced ambition and reducing overall greenhouse gas emissions. The role that we see from the private sector is a very complementary one to government, right? Government has to bring in the policy aspect, particularly to align the policies with the NDCs. They have to really work on the fiscal space to help the private sector to operate in these areas. But from the private sector side, the leading role that we see that they play, one is on innovation and technology development. Private sector in our work, they drive the creation of sustainable products, processes, as well as business model. So large corporations, for example, have the resources to develop and commercialize new technologies that improve resource efficiency, reduce waste, and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And we work with SMEs in a number of countries, in the Philippines, in Nepal, in Uzbekistan, in a number of countries, really because they do have the agility to innovate and work with these big corporations to bring in that innovation and the technology development. And the second point, from the company side, this is another inward-facing role that they play, is investments and finance. Private sector has this the role that they play in terms of investment and finance, particularly for scaling up SCP and circular economy activities. They can allocate capital towards sustainable projects, infrastructure, as well as technologies to support climate mitigation and adaptation. The companies that we work with, they also play an external facing role, which is the first one being the significant influence that they have over their supply chains to really promote sustainable practices, for example, to implement sustainability criteria in procurement decisions, and incentivize suppliers to adopt environmentally friendly practices, and to work along the value chains to do this. And then the second one is consumer engagement and education. I think companies, big or small, have the opportunity to really engage their consumers and raise awareness about sustainable consumption choices, Some of the companies that we work with, they do run marketing campaigns, product labeling, as well as consumer education initiatives to really empower individuals to make more environmentally friendly choices. And the third one is policy advocacy and collaboration. Most of the times we see government being the leader, and which is a role that government has to play in terms of policy development and policy alignment, but also private sector can also play a role in policy advocacy and collaboration with governments, as well as NGOs and other stakeholders. And then the final one I have in terms of the role that private sector can play is around reporting on transparency. We see all these standards and guidelines coming in particularly for large companies to really report on their sustainable practices, but we are also working with incubators, so small businesses as well as medium-sized businesses to accelerate through green practices and help them to really report and become transparent in their practices. And through that, we have a program called Greenpreneur Program, where we provide grants and no interest loans for businesses to really promote these practices. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Zinaida.
Thank you very much, Achala. And then now the ball is with you for the last reflection. Achala seems like indicating quite a number of very innovative approaches where either the private sector or interplay between the private sector and the governments could open the avenues of financing and innovation along the supply chains and also, I assume, by the communities. So can I just bring you a little bit closer to the policy barriers on the side of the government and give us a few innovative approaches how to break those barriers. So our speakers, a number of them, including from the governments, mentioned how sometimes it's difficult to leave the floor towards ambitious actions. What would be your advice or strategy to point?
Thanks, Zinaida. Perhaps what I could share really is examples from our member countries, NDC partnership member countries, who have kind of faced these challenges and how they seek support to overcome those. Initially, Sanjay mentioned there is still an issue of limited awareness or political will, and that's really true. But we do see countries coming up with requests and being supported. For example, ADB supported Mongolia on the framework development, outreach materials, awareness raising events on public-private partnerships, specifically on circular economy as part of their 2020 NDC implementation planning. In another region, UNDP is also supporting El Salvador in socializing and raising awareness among businesses and the public regarding the national policy for integrated solid waste management that was prepared with a gender and intersectional approach. But of course we do the challenge is still there, and there are other challenges as well. Like I understand perhaps some governments may have a shorter term economic focus, not just governments but businesses also, prioritizing immediate economic developments over long-term sustainability investments in SCP and circular economy. But we see also examples of overcoming that post-COVID-19. For example, Indonesia's Ministry of National Planning and Development was supported by World Bank and WRI in analyzing COVID-19 impacts and then designing policy recommendations on how the stimulus packages can trigger low carbon development and green economy. This culminated in the 4-year action plan comprising specific pilot projects in the waste, agriculture and forestry sectors, leading to more jobs. And another challenge that I also see is institutional silos and perhaps fragmented you know, the NDC is a government-wide effort, and so many agencies are involved. But we see examples in our countries where strong coordinators, you know, can overcome this. For example, in Cambodia, in developing the NDC partnership plan to implement the 2020 NDC. The mandate is clear that the National Council for Sustainable Development played a coordinating role for sectoral agencies in developing, to guide sectoral agencies in developing their strategies. And then they are guided by the circular economy strategy and action plan that I mentioned earlier. And then they could work closely with the Department of Green Economy to then develop circularity projects, in that case, particularly in the waste and industry sectors. So we already see very good projects coming up, like landfill gas extraction, composting of biodegradable organic fraction from municipal solid waste, and also building a centralized recycling facility. So yeah, coordination can also lead to you know, cross-sectoral application of circularity. I think I'll yield the time back to you, Zinaida.
Achala, then GGGI, Green Growth, Global Green Growth Institute, and NDC Partnership team representatives. Thank you very much for great exchange. And that brings us, colleagues, to the end of our rich series of exchanges. I would now try maybe to make a couple of points which certainly would not give a justice to the rich discussion. We will publish a summary note on the basis of this exchange. The record is also going to be available, but from my side, what is quite important to emphasize, that it appears to be that all of our colleagues are emphasizing that NDCs can be enhanced through sustainable consumption and production circular economy strategies and policies, and vice versa. SCP and circular economy can be strengthened by bringing focus from the perspective of climate change. The colleagues are saying that shift from infrastructure of focus and seeing material efficiency through infrastructure lens to material management across the supply chain is certainly being recognized. However, there is a still very large potential for integrating this into the policies, more coherent one. And more than that, by linking this to other discourses and strategies leading to transformational change, including just transition, gender sensitivity, and so on. Also, what is interesting from my perspective, that private sector has been increasingly recognized within the context of climate change and UNFCCC as a very important actor to bring together material efficiency and climate gains. So it's certainly there. And to empower this actor, we really need to look at the streams of bankable project, but also on facilitation of innovation across the supply chain, but also what particularly colleagues from the least developed countries or developing countries are saying, that we need also to empower communities to produce and innovate on the crossroad of those two areas of climate and SCP. So our conclusion is that it's certainly very potent area to look at, and this is where work has started. It helps potentially innovation dynamics. It helps potentially shifting the whole discourse of climate from financing only to access to market and leveraging the climate resilient markets, and therefore giving much more responsibility and control to local economies and more localized supply chains. So we are certainly finding very, very big promises of partnership among the organizations which are working on SCP and climate change arena. So this work is ongoing and accelerating, and we look forward in deepening this collaboration, not only regionally, but in individual countries. So quite a lot of follow-ups are to be expected. And with that, may I just ask, to extend our big thank you to all of the panelists, but also to our audience, which stayed with us in spite of quite late hours and slight overshoot in timing. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Zinaida.
you. Thank you.
You.